I'm Daniel Kopp, certified financial planner and financial therapist, and welcome to the Widow Life and Money podcast. As the founder of Wise Stewardship Financial Planning, I know that all too well that grief changes everything. My passion and purpose now is to take what I've learned as a widower, coupled with financial planning and advice, to be a help to you in your own unique grief journey. In this episode, I am excited to welcome Kelli C. Goodnow, whose journey is both inspiring and deeply personal. Kelli shares her story of love, loss, and the resilient path she has carved out since experiencing the unimaginable. Her perspective as a Gold Star widow navigating through the layers of grief and rebuilding a life for herself and her children offers invaluable insights to our community. Join us as we explore the profound impact of faith, the complexities of military benefits, and the transformative power of community support. Kelli's experiences not only highlight the challenges faced, but also the incredible strength and hope found along the way. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our journey together. Let's embrace this path, drawing strength from one another and moving towards a future filled with meaningful possibilities. Welcome to the podcast, Kelli. I'm so glad that you could be here to share your story, one of love and of loss, of grief and of growth. And I know that you're going to have a lot of great details from your personal story and the work that you do now to help our listeners.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'd love for you to kind of just start and share what your journey was like, how you obviously joined the club that nobody ever wants to be a part of. I've heard you talk about that before, and how your relationship with Sean impacted you early on in your marriage, and ultimately how that led to where you are today.
Yeah, well, gosh, that's a big question. There's a lot to that. So, um, Sean and I met in college at Texas A&M. He was commissioned as a Marine when we both graduated in '01. And so we were off straight out of college into our military adventure for 15 years. And he became a helicopter pilot. We had 4 children over that time, and we were stationed all over the country. And in 2016, while we were stationed in Hawaii, he was killed along with 11 fellow Marines in a helicopter crash. It was a nighttime training incident. It happened there just over the North Shore of Oahu. And so there I was in Hawaii with 4 very young children, suddenly facing a totally different life than we had planned. Widowed at 36 with 4 kids, and n- absolutely everything in your life disappears. And I didn't know what to do, where to go, how to move forward. But here I am 10 years later. There's a lot of good has come from that.
So you did not know any other life, basically post college, other than the Marine Corps, moving around. How did that impact things personally and professionally for you?
Yeah, and, that's all I knew. My whole adult life had been as a Marine Corps spouse, and moving around and living in different places and just being a part of this whole culture and community of the military. And so losing Sean meant losing all of that. And it meant having to make decisions like where to live. And the Marine Corps had always told us where to live. So what do I do now? I had chosen to homeschool our kids because it meant I could give them something consistent. It meant when Sean was home, we were home. When he had a chance to travel, we could all travel.
Yeah.
And so that was a great choice for us for those years. But then after, I found myself not knowing if that was the right thing or what to do or how to keep doing that. So yeah, everything in that instant changes, and it's a situation where you're not equipped to make decisions or to know what to do to move forward. So yeah, it's hard.
How has your faith impacted this journey? I've heard some of your testimony in other places that you've shared. We'll link to some of those in the show notes as well. How did you and Sean start out your marriage? What was that like for you as a couple, deepening your relationship and a faith? And then obviously, how did that intersect with this grief experience?
Mhm. Well, obviously, faith was something we shared from the beginning, something that drew us together. It was our common faith, and Sean was just an incredible person, and he had, some tough things growing up. He grew up without a dad, really, and so when I met him, um, he had met a man during his years in college who really became like a father figure to him, a mentor, and that man actually he ended up being the one to marry us. But also, Sean changed his name during college. He changed his name to take on that man's name. So he wasn't, officially adopted, but we were just sort of grafted into this family that had become Sean's family. And,
Wow.
so long story short, it just to see him go through that and embrace, just to see how God placed him in a family and under this father figure he needed, and then to see how he wanted to give that to his own family. He wanted to change his name to give his family a family name he was really proud of, and it was like he wanted to break that generational, um, just the problems, that he had seen. He didn't want to carry that on, and so that was how we started out, and that laid the foundation for everything. That kind of thinking forward, and he was just so thoughtful and caring, and at the time he was thinking about children we didn't have yet. And so fast forward through 15 years of being that way. And he was really good about thinking about the future and planning thoughtfully, and he just instilled that same, I say, peace. I talk a lot about the peace I felt when we first lost him. Of course, I was devastated and didn't know what to do, and it was scary, and all the, things are happening so fast around you, and I had no idea how I was going to survive that moment, but I knew I would, and I knew it'd be okay. Just didn't know how. But I was able to just say, I don't know how you're going to do this, God, but I trust you. Um, and even now I look back, and the fact that I was able to think that way was a gift and a blessing, because you just don't think you're going to react that way when
Mm,
everything falls apart. And so it was just neat to see that the life we had built, the foundation we had built in our faith, was there for us when we needed it in that moment. We had been preparing for that moment without even knowing it.
yeah. Reminds me of a wise person who once said, "You're either in a trial or you're getting ready for it." Sounds like, in many ways, the
True.
experience of your marriage and those 15 years in the Marine Corps, which we know brings with it so many challenges,
Hmm.
unspoken in our world, just known, right? Had been
Right.
preparing you for this even deeper trial. What were some
Right.
of the spiritual truths or verses or things that stand out meaningfully to you as you reflect back, especially in those early days of loss and grief and just that
Hmm.
unending darkness of sorrow?
Yeah. So one verse in particular that's now tattooed on my wrist was the first one that comes to mind. Um, at some point I heard those words from Isaiah 41:13. I am the God who takes hold of your right hand and says to you, I will help you. Do not be afraid. And also knowing, I don't know if I knew this then or have learned it since, but do not be afraid is the most repeated command in the Bible. Do not be afraid. And elsewhere it says, in this world you will have trouble. That is one thing we are promised in this
Yes.
earthly life. We will have trouble, but we can take heart. Um, he has overcome the world. And so I think it's when you instill that and believe that, um, that came back to me. This is why we want our kids to memorize scripture and hear truth, because then when you need that truth, that's what comes back. And so in that moment of just total, just chaos and having no understanding and wanting to be angry, I wanted to be angry at God, but I couldn't. It didn't even feel like an option, because I had such an overwhelming sense of peace. Not that this is okay, not that, like, oh, it's okay, we'll be fine, just an overwhelming sense of peace that he is in this with you, and he
Yeah.
has a plan. You don't need to know it all right now. um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Even though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, he's there with us. Paul also talked about, the peace that passes understanding, and well, that grace to help in
Hmm.
time of need. Until you're there, it's hard to know or to experience it other than to have lived it. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
so much of that
Yeah.
testimony.
Yeah. Incredible, incredible thing to experience. I'll say one other verse. There's a verse in Job at the end. I need Job. If you've heard his story, he just goes through every one of the worst trials you can possibly imagine. Um, and at the end, he says, My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. And
Mm,
that's how I felt. Like, I have heard these things, I have believed these things all my life. But now I've actually seen that it's true. Now I know what I believe is what I believe.
yeah.
So that really hit me around that time.
Hmm. So, what is the grief evolution? How's the grief journey evolved from those fresh, painful, dark days to, especially reflecting back, these more recent years, as you have moved forward, right? There's no moving on
Hmm.
from grief. That
Hmm.
loss is always a part of you. You and Sean will always have that relationship. And when it's severed, right, this side of eternity, the pain is always there.
Hmm.
But share some encouragement, perhaps, for listeners who are fresher, earlier in their days, as you reflect
Yeah.
back these many years later.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't remember a lot from those days. I know that fog of confusion, but I remember that just thinking, how can I ever, how can this ever not hurt this much? um, and and I've heard it said in different ways. The grief doesn't diminish; our hearts grow around it. The grief doesn't go away. We just are able to carry it. There's all these different ways to put it, but it's
Mhm.
true. It doesn't go away. It doesn't leave you. It doesn't get it doesn't hurt less, but it just gets different. It gets different. And your life expands around it so that now you're carrying this heavy, hard thing, but you're also carrying all this beauty and goodness and miracles that you didn't expect to see ever in your life. All the goodness that I would not have experienced without this tragedy. Um, and that is where only someone who's been there can understand these words. But I can look back and be thankful for what I got to see God do in that situation. No, I'm not thankful my husband died. No, I'm not thankful for the pain that we still carry and that my kids still carry. But I can be thankful for life today and where it's at and what he's done with that and how far and how much he's brought us through. And I could say that to anyone. You will get to a point where you'll be able to look back and say, oh, I see what you were doing. I
Yeah.
see it. You'll get there. You will.
Thank you. Yeah. It's like James talks about the brevity of life. What is your life here for a bit of vapor? And sometimes I think I'm in conversations with other people who have not gone through loss or sorrow or hard things. And God has different paths for us all to walk. But that's when I get a chance to reflect back and think like what a gift it is to have seen and experienced and known the brevity of life with the loss of a spouse, and to
Mhm.
carry that lesson forward through the rest of our earthly days here in a way that not everybody gets to. It's a painful,
Yeah.
sorrowful lesson, but one filled with deep meaning. Now, you've talked
Hmm.
about your kids a couple of times, so you're not just grieving as a spouse during this time frame, but you're also grieving as a parent, right? Grieving for the loss that your children experienced with their father.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, that was definitely, I'd say, the worst part. I remember that day that I had to be the one to tell them he wasn't coming home. Uh, After a week of this search and rescue operation where I knew in my heart he was gone, but all this was happening around us. So they had kind of this, I hate to say this false sense of hope, like maybe daddy will be found.
Uh,
And I had to say, and obviously still I can't think about that moment. It hurts so much. And I remember just asking the people, right around me, how do I do it? How do I say these words to them? Um, because I knew this it was so final. I had to be the one to finally break their hearts. And oh gosh, and so then everything since then, there's the hard, just grieving with them and watching them grieve, watching them go through all different we all respond in different ways. So there's anger and there's sadness, or, as they've grown, just to see the different phases of their lives where different pieces come out, and my oldest was turning 12, just, becoming a man and loses his dad. My youngest was 2. And so their grief experiences have been very different.
yeah,
And so it means with each one, it's different. And so there's no one size fits all recipe for helping your kids through. And I think I wanted to know, like, what do I do? I'm a doer. I needed to know the right thing to do, and I'm going to do it, and we're going to get through this. But they've all needed something different.
yeah,
And that's where me just kind of letting go, and I have watched God come into each of their lives in different ways that they needed that help, and that's been incredible. And they're doing amazing today. They really are.
yeah. What were some things that were helpful as far as like resources or community based or organizations that helped you, especially in those early years that you reflect back on and think, wow, I'm so thankful for that organization or those people or that resource?
Yeah. There were so many. And that's what led me to do what I'm doing now, is that I just felt so overwhelmed with help and support, and honestly just like undeserving of how much we were given and helped. And I just wanted so much to be grateful and to show that gratitude and to pass that on. And so early on, it was, scholarships for my kids to go to a K through 12 private school. When I did finally decide I can't homeschool without my home, I don't know what to do, I was able to put them in a little school where they were still all together under one roof. And the scholarships gave me the peace of mind, that they could stay there. It wouldn't be disrupted again. I could
Hmm.
pay for it. And so, that was one of the first things. But, beyond that, there have been little things like, um, Gary Sinise's Snowball Express. And,
Yeah.
I got to take my kids to Disney, and you see those things, and it's like, I don't know, it's just me, sometimes it's almost like I feel undeserving of so much,
Yeah.
like other kids lose their dad and they don't get to go to Disney World, why do we get this? But I just have to be grateful that this is something that's meeting my kids where they're at, and it's giving them an opportunity to make these memories and be around other kids that understand their particular loss. And
Hmm.
so we're just
Yes.
grateful for each, and there's been so much along the way, and then just personal friends and family that have supported us. Um, I can look back and see things, and I think what I often tell people is, you know, to just show up and do what you feel you can do and help, and don't worry about asking or stepping on toes, or n- never ask a woman whose husband is missing at sea, like, what do you need?
Yeah. Just do
She
it.
doesn't know what she needs. She needs her husband back, right? No, just do the laundry, just take the kids to a movie, just show up. And that's what, so many organizations did, just showing up and saying, here, look, here's a scholarship, so that's one less thing you're going to worry about. We've
Yeah.
got you. That's huge.
And that scholarship that was from Folds of Honor for the K
So
through
yeah,
12.
yeah, K through 12 Folds of Honor, and also an organization called Folded Flag. um, Between those two, my kids have been covered for K through 12 ever
Yeah.
since, and that's just been that is a eternal gift that changes their whole future lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how were things organized in your family before Sean died, and who was managing the household finances? How did that change? What were some of the roles and responsibilities that you had to step into in that way?
Yeah, he definitely managed, big picture finances and planning and all of that. But honestly, we both hated the day to day, like budgeting. I'd say that went back and forth a lot. And if he was deployed, that was all on me. So
Oh
I
yeah,
tended to be the bill payer, but he tended to be the investor and the planner. And so, and that worked well. But I tell you what, one thing that was, again, just a gift from God. He, at some point, within a year or two of him dying, he had created a list of all our passwords and accounts.
yes,
And this is something I've seen around, like, have a life planner book, like, don't let that be something that only one person has access to. But just because he had that list, I was able to get into everything, know where everything was, know what I had to deal with. I was able to hand that to my dad and my brother-in-law, who were right there next to me helping me with those things. And so I just turned it over to them and said, just, here's everything. What do I do? Um, so yeah, that was huge. Just that he had really, without knowing, he had put in place things that got us through that time. And I'm so grateful now.
yeah.
Yeah.
That gift of love that perhaps he didn't even realize it at the time, but helped
Hmm.
create a firm foundation. Yeah, password and digital app management access is one of the biggest challenges that we see.
Hmm.
So if people aren't already using something like a LastPass or a One Password or Password
Yes.
Manager, it's more difficult if it's not written down. But that once you
I'm
get
learning
that digital,
LastPass right now. So it's taken me 10 years, but I'm finally getting to a safer system, because yeah, I won't tell you how unsafe my current system is. So I'm working on LastPass.
but yeah, once that's set up, then it gives easier access to a lot of that. But academic research shows that household role delegation in personal finance is pretty common. So now you have to step in and do household CFO duties across the whole thing. Now that also relates to kind of the work that you do now, which we'll talk about more in just a second. But all right, so you go ahead and move back to Kansas. You're trying to figure out what's next slowly, one little bit at a time. Kids are in school, surrounded by family, friends, lots of support. What were you thinking about as you tried to figure out what's next at that stage?
Yeah. So yeah, we moved to Kansas pretty quickly after the crash and everything. And not because Kansas was home necessarily. Kansas was where my parents lived. They had moved there 10 years or so before from Texas, where I grew up. So I moved there knowing that's my safe place. I'll stay with them while we figure this out, but maybe I'll move to Washington, live by my sister, or maybe Pennsylvania by my other sister, or maybe Texas by my brother, or
Okay.
any number of friends across the world. And so I didn't know if I was even going to stay here. And it was putting my children in school that really was that first step. And that's what I look back now and know, you want to know all the answers and you want to know what to do and how to fix it all, right? But I just got one little piece at a time that I could handle, and that first piece was just go to Kansas, put your house in storage, go to Kansas and wait. And then the next piece was here's a school and a way to pay for it. And your kids are, it's been months. We've been out of school for Christmas break, and then this happened. And I was starting to panic about what are we doing? I put them in school. And then this little school community was so wonderful. And we found a home near the school. So now we have a house. And then we found a church near our house. And it was like just this snowball of next steps. But I couldn't see 5 years down the road. I could see today.
Yeah.
I could do today. And sometimes that was like just take a nap today. But very slowly the picture, expanded out. And just one step after another led to this whole new life. And now 10 years, almost 10 years later, we're still in Kansas City. I do say I'm from Kansas City. It's home. Um, my kids are all trying to get back to the beach in some way. So as they grow up and go to
Yeah.
college, I might lose them all. But no, I just, it doesn't happen all at once. And I think that's something I would tell someone going through that. Like, don't try to figure it all out. It's too much for you to handle
Yeah.
all at once. Um, just do the next thing, right?
Wisdom is sometimes not knowing the whole roadmap, but just like you said, that one next right decision. Part of
Mhm.
that one next right decision was when you met Michael and then got remarried.
Mhm.
One of the things that comes up regularly amongst my clients and people that I talk to in this community, though, is remarriage, right? Remarriage before age 55 and how that impacts things like losing survivor benefits. How did you
Right.
think about that? What was your approach? And how did you finally come to a personal decision and resolution about that?
Yeah. Um, yeah, sadly there's so much fear instilled because of that. And it's just really unfair, honestly. Spouses who remarry before age 55 forfeit all those benefits. So, and it's just a gut punch when you think about the 15 years that I served behind him, right? I signed my name next to his in invisible ink. And
Yes.
so then to be told, well, that doesn't matter. We're taking all that away because now you're remarried. It doesn't make sense. But I also have, because of my faith and, strong feelings about stability in my family and commitment, I wanted to fully commit to my new husband. And that doesn't take away from the love and commitment I had for Sean. Um, we fulfilled our marriage vows till death do we part. And so, there's no guilt there in moving
Hmm.
forward. I'm
Yes.
not forgetting him. I'm not diminishing that commitment. But but to not move forward fully would diminish what I have in the future with Mike, and it would take away from that commitment for him. And so that was my personal belief anyways. And so I moved forward, remarry. No, I was knowing I was gonna, give up my healthcare benefits and my education benefits and social security and all the things that I, Sean had earned. And I just trusted God to fill that gap. I just, made that choice. But I have such compassion for, only 5% of military widows remarry.
Yeah.
The average age of a military widow is 25, and only 5% remarry, not because they don't want to or they're not meeting someone, but because they don't feel they're able to give that income up or the health care or whatever. Um, and that's a terrible position to put those spouses in. It's
Yes.
terrible. They shouldn't have to make that choice. And so there is legislation out there. If this moves anyone who's listening, call your senator and your congressman and show your support for the Love Lives On Act, because they do want to get that changed. And there have been little pieces here and there. This fall, I get to go get a new military ID. So, that little piece changed where I can have an ID again. And it seems like not a big thing, but it is a big thing to think. I can't drive onto a military base with my children to show them where they were born. I can't
Yeah.
go shopping, at the commissary, or um, get that military discount somewhere. I mean, like, whatever that gives you,
It's
it's
symbolism,
kind
though.
of it is. It's just symbolic of, like, I gave 15 years of my life to this, and I'm still a part of that community. That didn't change. That I still think the Marine Corps is still so much of my family. Anyways, this is a very long-winded answer. That was my choice. I have a lot of compassion for people that have a lot of fear on that choice, but I think that's a big thing too, is to recognize, are you making decisions out of fear, or out of confidence that you're going to be okay, that you're going to be taken care of in the future.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unknowns, and we just can't cling to the fear.
Well,
um,
thank you for your
yeah.
advocacy along with others to help get that legislation move forward. It's something that we've been helping to work on behind the scenes as well. Now, let's talk
Yeah.
about how one of the next things that you did as well is going back to school and you got your executive MBA, which ultimately you had to pay for because of, like you said, your own Friar scholarship going away. Why
Mhm.
did you decide to go back to school and how did that empower what your next career steps were?
Yeah, good question. I still am like, what was I thinking? I was a Parks and Rec major at Texas A&M, outdoor education, and so for me, 20 something years later, to go back and get an MBA was just completely out of left field, but it was an opportunity that presented itself. I was kind of recruited to this program, and just like so many other things I've done, I just looked at it and went, I don't really know why this is before me, but I'm going to say yes. I'm going to just go for it. I'm going to see what God wants to do with this, and it was amazing. It was an amazing program. I grew so much personally through that, gained so much confidence. I had been sort of launched into this role, in nonprofit. I was a corporate development officer. I had like a title. I was speaking, doing things I never saw myself doing, and just learning along the way. And this, I felt, was my opportunity to really take hold of all of that and say, I've learned something here, and I have found some things I'm good at. And I did it for me. I did it to give myself the confidence to say, no, I didn't just stumble into this and now I'm, figuring it out. I'm going to take ownership of
Yeah.
this opportunity God's given me. And then from there, that ended up leading me into this new role. And so, yeah, I'm glad I did it. It was a tough pill to swallow, the cost, but because my children were taken care of as far as college, I knew I could make that investment. And, I just scrimped and saved and budgeted, and I paid it monthly. And so I came out with no debt, thankfully. Um, but yeah, it would have been great to have that scholarship. But then, yeah.
So, how have you seen personally, not just personally, but also professionally in your role of how education like that, even the K through 12, as well as college education, can empower fellow Gold Star widows and their children to create futures reflecting on the resilience and the purpose that you've talked about this time, but also creating that new chapter?
Yeah. Yeah, there's such a difference in going to school when you're going because you're 18 and you're told that's what you're supposed to do after high school, versus going to school when you've actually learned some things and found some things you enjoy and are passionate about, and you want to do more, you want to learn more. And so I was hungry to learn more and do more. And so just totally different experiences. But yeah, education, we talk about all the issues facing military families in particular. There's a poverty crisis, and food and housing insecurity and mental health, and all of these things. There are ways that are being done to help and should be done, but also, what are we doing to get out of that cycle? And I think education is that piece that is breaking that cycle. Over a third of the students in our program, we're finding, are first generation students.
Wow.
So this is a generational change that's happening. And you say what you want about higher ed. I feel like there's different opinions out there. Some kids aren't meant for college, some are meant for trade school, or yes. And we support all of that. But it is still true that having a higher education degree leads to a greater quality of life and greater earning potential and greater health, greater mental health. All of those things are better, the more education. And so I just think it's so important. And we get to a point in our lives where we think it's too late. Yeah, it's never too late. It's never too late to pivot.
Yeah.
And military families know that well. you get orders and then those orders change and you got to do something different. Or, in my case, like my whole life changed. So it's never too late to do something completely different than you thought or you planned, because our plans aren't always what's meant to be. Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
military life certainly teaches that early on, and then
Yeah.
focusing in this way. Now, you've talked about your personal experience, but also let's talk about your role as a mom, because you have professional expertise helping kids navigate some of these education decisions. But what was it like for you as a parent helping kids think about that? Especially sounds like you're still in that role.
Yeah, yeah. So my oldest is now he's in summer school. He's going into his junior year in college. And then my second, she's entering college this fall. So it's been eye-opening. Having K through 12 support was a big deal, navigating that. And then the whole college process. Um, it has taught me so much that I know is helping me to help others. It's taught me so much about the military benefits process and where the holes and the gaps are, and seeing what my children receive versus what children or spouses of 100% disabled veterans receive. Seeing the difference there is what has
Mhm.
led me to really, my heart breaks for that, because um, the disparity is just, it's huge in those benefits. And so I've just learned so much going through the process with my kids about questions people have or solutions that are out there, and it's fun to be able to pass that on. It's really rewarding to be able to meet someone and have an answer. I'm a fixer and a doer, remember, but also just to be able to walk alongside them and just be there for people. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk a little bit now about your current role and what Valor Partners does, how the foundation's matching model works to,
Mhm.
partner with schools and double every donated dollar, and uh, what that means for ultimately for students.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and that goes back to your other question, that, the reason I love this program so much is because I see, having experienced the process of getting my kids into college, helping them through that process, helping them apply for scholarships, and then keep up with the scholarship check-ins, and then make sure the
Mhm.
money
Yep.
gets where it's supposed to go from where it was.
So much logistics.
It's a lot. It's a whole other part-time job I've got. And my kids are very responsible, and I expect them to be involved and understand. And we share spreadsheets, and they know where that money's coming from. Because I want them to know, how many people have invested in them. And they are so grateful that they're doing really amazing things because they have these opportunities, and they're stewarding that well. But I look at that, I look at what we've done, excuse me, and then I see, families that maybe don't have the same resources, don't know what's out there, or
Yeah.
if I was in a situation where I was a caregiver for my husband and dealing with medical and VA things, and would I be able to devote that much time for my children to help them through, I just if I wasn't helping them through it, I don't know that they would be able to take advantage of all the opportunities they have. They wouldn't know what to look for or ask for. So, to answer your actual question, our program is different in that we partner with the school so that that school can pull a list of their dependents, their spouses, children of 100% disabled veterans. They're called Chapter 35 students. The school knows who they are. They can look at their finances, they can look at their accounts, everything, and know who has need, who has a balance. Let's find out why. So they know where the need is, what the need is, and they can meet that need better than I could by saying, "Hey, come apply to the scholarship and we'll give
Yeah.
you a check and a pat on
Yeah.
the back." And instead, we've got the school, we've got boots on the ground right there on the campus caring for those students. And so by this partnership has just brought about greater awareness of the needs of dependents. Um, just that awareness leads to greater support and expanded programs and resources. And our hope, partners is our name for a reason. We want to bring in other partners, other organizations that can provide opportunities and help for those families, but not to make them come find it. We're going to go find them. They're already doing the hard work of going to school and trying to change and trying to move forward. So we want to come alongside and help, and not make them come looking for us, right? So that's the beauty of the partnership, and the fact that every dollar we raise is matched by a school for a scholarship, and so they're getting twice as much financial support as they would if we were doing this alone outside. So
Yeah. It's so powerful because it's proactive, right? Rather than waiting for need to surface and show up in sometimes other ways of the financial vulnerabilities that students and their families in those situations can have. So I love that model. I
Yeah.
mean, that
Yeah.
aligns so much with even just behavioral finance research. So well
It's
done.
it's been amazing. Yeah, and then the hope is, we meet these families where they're at. We provide the scholarship that helps pay the bill to keep them in school. But now what? Now we know that through that Military and Veterans Center on campus, they can have financial counseling, mental health counseling. Maybe there's a book lending library, textbook library, on that center. There's all these other opportunities that they otherwise might not have taken advantage of. And now they know that we're here for you. They're less hesitant to reach out for more help when they know someone's there who actually wants to help. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for sharing your story today and the current role, the passion that you have for so many of these things. I'd love for you just to take this closing moment to share, what this journey's been like as an encouragement to someone who is just earlier on, right? That loss is
Hmm.
still that much fresher. What are some of the
Hmm.
things that if you were doing a one-on-one mentoring session that you might share at this stage?
Gosh, so many things. It's weird for me to think how much time has passed because moments it doesn't feel like that. But then I look at my kids and how far they've come, and I just go, oh, that's me now. I remember meeting women, one in particular, a good friend who is 10 years down the road. And so, here I am just freshly in this loss, and it's been 10 years for her.
Hmm.
And I just thought, oh, she's figured it all out. She's okay, but that's her, that's not going to be me, and seeing how her kids had grown and thrived and they were entering college and they were doing great. And just thinking, is that going to be, it gave me hope that maybe we'll be like that. It also, I still had that fear, like, but that's her, that's not me, I just remember being in that place of not knowing. And I would just say, not to lean into the fear, but to the hope, that there is a future. It's good. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's always going to hurt. But also, there's going to be so much beauty, and to look for that beauty, to seek the joy in that. Easier said than done. But if you're focused on looking for what is good that's happening, what can I be grateful for? It all sounds cliche until you're in that moment. But it makes all the difference in the world if you can see there is goodness here. There is beauty coming from this. And so, today my kids are thriving. My son is in college in Tokyo, Japan,
Wow.
and he's just incredible. He's an incredible young man. And my daughter's on her way to Florida, and everyone says, "Your daughter's going to Florida? How are you doing?" And I'm like, "No, I'm good. The other one's in Japan. Florida's nothing." But they're all following a different path, but a good one. And I just have seen them grow up, yes, with a lot of grief and sadness and stuff I wish I could take away, but also with a perspective that is irreplaceable. They are compassionate and kind, and um, their worldview is just different, and it's good. It has made them incredible, incredible humans. And so, and I don't regret that. I don't, and I don't regret that for them. Um, so, I would just say, keep moving forward. Just do the next thing. You don't have to figure it out. And also, you need help. You need help.
Yes.
Ask questions and let people help you. Let people in, because you don't have to figure it all out yourself. I sure didn't.
I love that part. Surround yourself by the community and figure rest in God's grace as you figure out what's next.
Yeah.
Where can people get connected with you if they could learn more or follow your story, especially the work that you're doing now at Valor Partners?
Yeah. Just valorpartners.org. Pretty sure my email and everything is there on our website, and you can contact me through the website. Find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm on all of those. Kelly Campbell Goodnow. And I am always happy to be. I love it when people randomly reach out to me and just say, "Hey, I think you went through the same thing I did, and I know this is weird, but I just want to know, am I going to be okay?" And I've
Yeah.
gotten messages like that, and I love it because it tells me that people see what God did for me. It's not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't do it, but they see something, and I want to be able to share that. So yeah, I love it when people reach out to me or connect me with someone. Definitely follow what Valor Partners is doing because it's good, and I think a lot of military families, I hope, will be blessed by this opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you again for coming on, Kelly, and sharing your story. We're so grateful for it.
Thank you very much.